Good morning. I wanted to tell you about a woman named Florine Thornhill. She lived in Roanoke, Virginia. Now, Florine lived in perhaps not the most desirable neighborhood. There had been a lot of crime there, and people were beginning to get numb to the whole situation. But one morning she went out for a walk, and right near where she lived was this vacant lot, and it was overgrown, with grass and weeds. And as she was walking by, she saw a woman lying there. And a few minutes later, she's walking along. She's like, "Wait a minute! There was a woman lying back there, and I didn't even bother to check to see if she was okay." Florine was 73, at least at the time, and she came back home, called her son, and described the situation. He came over, and sure enough, the woman had probably been drinking the night before and had passed out there and everything. But so she was okay and all. But Florine was like, what is mine to do here? I see my neighborhood just kind of losing its spirit, and I got to do something. I love this place. And she came up with an idea. She went down to City Hall, see if she could contact her alderman, and talked to the alderman and said, "What I would like to do is to borrow a lawnmower." He says, "Borrow a lawnmower? Talk to me a little bit about this." So she described the situation and says, "Yeah, sure." And he was able to line up, lawnmower. And she says, "I want to borrow it every week." And so she went out there the next day when she got a lawnmower and mowed the lawn in that vacant lot, and just picked up. And some of the people in the neighborhood came over and like, "What are you doing? Why are you mowing this, this lot?" And she said, "Well, this is what is mine to do. If you want to help me, great. If not." Next week she came out, 15 people from the neighborhood came and helped her, and then they worked on some other vacant lots and picking up trash. And suddenly, this little, very beneficial virus started in the neighborhood. The alderman noticed, and so gathered together some of the people who had been doing this and said, "Would you be willing to talk to people in other neighborhoods?" And sure enough, they got together and talked to other people in other neighborhoods about what they were doing. Within about a year, 25 different neighborhoods in Roanoke, Virginia were doing this. And it was just so successful that other cities in Virginia also started doing the same thing. All of this started in 1980. In 1994, at the age of 87, Florine Thornhill was given the President's Volunteer Action Award for volunteer efforts that changed the community. But Florine Thornhill, when she was interviewed afterwards, was saying, "Isn't this a wonderful award?" She goes, "Oh, the greatest reward I have is seeing kids playing in a playground which was once a vacant lot in my neighborhood." One of the polarities that we need to address here is that we need to choose whether we are going to embrace love or embrace fear. Those are the polarities, love and fear. A lot of people think it's love and hate, but no, hate is a reaction to fear. So we have the opportunity, as we walk through the day, to recognize, are we embracing love or are we embracing fear? The vast majority of people want to do good, want to make this world a better place. And when we read what's going on in the news, it can be pretty discouraging. There are right now 46 armed conflicts in the world. Obviously we hear about Ukraine, and we hear what happened this week with, of course, the passenger jet being shot down. I was listening to a radio interview of a professor who understands Russian and Ukraine very well, and he's saying, what we didn't hear about were the other planes that were shot down this week, fighter jets and cargo planes, right in that same vicinity. But you look at what's happening right here in our hemisphere. You got Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador in a civil war, literally a drug war, drug lords trying to take over and targeting children, and suddenly we have 50,000 children at our southern border. Refugees. We have wildfires. We have droughts. And sometimes, you have to take a nice deep breath and ask, what's mine to do? What is mine to do? And then follow your guidance. Because only you can have the answer to that. What is yours to do? In the Bible book Proverbs, 3rd chapter, 5th verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart. You do not rely on your own mind. In all your ways acknowledge God, and God will make straight your paths. I kind of found this passage interesting because I know I've talked before about the idea of the bright ideas and the divine ideas. The bright ideas are sometimes that thing that we come up with in our ego. Generally, it's a bright idea about maybe how to make money rather than how to make a life. Where a divine idea that comes to us from that divine mind, that divine realm, comes to us with a passion that we recognize that it carries with it everything that's possible to make it just unfold. Where the bright ideas, we find we just often get stuck and recognize there isn't a passion there except for maybe an ulterior motive. Let me give you a quote from the writer Henry Miller. Every man has his own destiny. The only imperative is to follow it, accept it, no matter where it leads him or her. The writer Napoleon Hill said, cherish your visions and your dreams as they are the children of your soul, the blueprints of your ultimate achievements. See, a lot of us make the mistake in life in thinking that we need to be focused on the destination, especially when we talk about short-term goals. It's almost like we hop a train, we get this wonderful cross-country train ride, and we're focused on the destination. We're not paying attention to the beautiful scenery that's going by. We've got cars in some places, cattle in others. We've got factories in some places, farm fields in the others. You have children waving at the train, and yet we're focused perhaps on the destination. And I remember in one of the Joseph Campbell interviews, The Power of Myth, he talks about how, we discover as we get farther along in the journey, and it seems like we think we're making progress, but at times it seems like the destination's getting farther and farther away, that we finally get it, that, hey, this is about the journey. This is about living life day by day, being in the moment as much as we can, rather than getting caught up on what's the long-term goal. Because the truth is, the long-term goal is us doing your memorial service. And when you get there, we will celebrate your life, but were you paying attention day by day? You get caught up in, as soon as I'm 18, then I'll do fill in the blank. As soon as I'm 22, I'll do this. As soon as I get married, I'll do this. We start coming up with the excuses, Once the mortgage is paid off, once the kids are in college. Rather than making the most out of every day. In the book of Psalms, 118, 24th verse, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. You see, it is not the burdens of today that drive humans mad. It's the regrets over yesterday, the fear of tomorrow. It's regrets and fears. Those are the thieves who come in the night, steal some sleep from us with our regrets and fears. So stop pacing the aisles and counting the miles. Instead, climb more mountains, eat more ice cream, go barefoot once in a while, swim more rivers, watch more sunsets, laugh more, cry less. Life must be lived day by day. Carla and I, of course, were in Unity Seminary from 2000 through 2002. And if you think about that time span, there was one Tuesday morning, which was September 11th, 2001. We start all of our classes there at 8 in the morning. And then, of course, the Twin Towers were struck, and they suspended classes, and we gathered around television sets. We're watching things unfold, like so many people were. Yet I found myself asking the question, what is mine to do? And they're watching the TV, and the second tower started to crumble. And I just almost shouted within myself, what is mine to do? And this guidance came to me. He says, well, you're about 300 yards away from Silent Unity, where Unity has its 24-hour, 7-day-a-week prayer room. You've gone through the training. You did your practicum. Why don't you go over there and volunteer and get on the phones? And that's what I did. And when we suspended classes, we decided to get back together at 11:30. But I went over and I fielded phone calls from people with their prayer requests. It was interesting because some people who called didn't even seem to, hadn't turned on the TV, didn't know what was going on. But it was a very humbling experience. And then when we got together at 11:30, we talked, and people said, "Well, Bob, where did you go?" And I told them. And after that, our entire ministerial school class went over to Silent Unity and helped them out there for hours there. So what is yours to do? Carla was sharing with me this prayer that was written the day after September 11th, on September 12th. It was by a nun, Judith Hill. And I know this morning for our 9:30 meditation, Karen Kirchman did a guided meditation talking about breathing. And that was the gist of the beginning of this prayer, which is almost like a poem. But let me read it to you. It's time to wage peace. Wage peace with your breath. Breathe in firemen and rubble. Breathe out whole buildings and flocks of red-winged blackbirds. Breathe in terrorists and breathe out sleeping children and freshly mown fields. Breathe in confusion. Breathe out maple trees. Breathe in the fallen and breathe out lifelong friendships. Wage peace with your listening. Hearing silence, pray even louder. Remember your tools, flower seeds, clothespins, clean rivers. Make some soup. Play music. Memorize the words for thank you in 3 languages. Learn to knit and make a hat. Think of chaos as dancing raspberries. Imagine grief as the outbreath of beauty or the gesture of a fish. Swim for the other side. Wage peace today. Never has the world seemed so fresh and precious. Have a cup of tea and rejoice. Act as if armistice has already arrived. Celebrate today. Wage peace. Again, that was written on September 12, 2001 by Judith Hill. Never underestimate the power of a single action. And never underestimate the power of individuals coming together as a group. Back in 1981, after President Ronald Reagan was inaugurated, I was actually working in Washington, D.C. as a correspondent for some Wisconsin TV stations. But I finished my assignment there and came back home, and it was a few days later that on March 30th, 1981, that President Reagan was shot. And, we learned afterwards that, he was this close to death. I mean, they wheeled him into the surgery, and of course, there's the famous line of Reagan looking at the doctors and said, "I hope you guys are all Republicans." But the interesting thing was that government didn't stop. Everything unfolded just fine. Later that summer, in Philadelphia, a union of garbage collectors went on strike. And the city came to a grinding halt within days. It was also a bit smelly. But how do we change the world? We recognize that what we can do as one person, and we follow the guidance. We recognize that what we love to do, the passion that we can bring to a situation. Like I said, when you see someone grieving on TV in the Ukraine, well, is there someone that you can hug here who might be in grief? Follow your divine guidance. There was a sign at this lawn and garden shop, which I got a kick out of. It says, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time to plant a tree is today. So yeah, it would be nice if for the last 10 years, perhaps, you were meditating every day and you're fine, you're in inner peace totally today. But what if you aren't? Why not start today? It's a good idea to plant seeds, small gestures, random acts of kindness, doing things for other people. Whatever we focus on expands. And if we're planting seeds, the seeds will grow. The seeds will come to fruition. So be willing to follow your divine guidance. I have a quote here from John Maxwell. History's greatest accomplishments have been made by people who did only slightly more than the others in their field. So what is that divine idea to perhaps improve something that you're very familiar with? However, people have also gotten divine guidance to improve something that they're not familiar with. Back in the 1880s, there was a Scottish veterinarian recognizing that he wasn't enjoying his work. He was watching his child struggle. The child was trying to ride a tricycle. And back in those days, the tricycles had metal wheels, just like metal rims for wheels. And he came up with an idea. What if I were to take a sheet of rubber, wrap it into a tube and inflate it, and wrap it around these wheels? And in 1887, a fellow named John Dunlop started the Dunlop Tire Company. A cork salesman was very frustrated with his life, and one morning he was just aggravated at how hard it was to use a straight razor to shave. And it seemed like the only place you could get a decent shave was to go to a barber. And he came up with this idea of what if you were to take a double-edged blade, and he invented essentially the old safety razor. His name was King Gillette. There was a bookkeeper who was struggling. He had actually started one business and went bankrupt, and he was just frustrated, but he had a hobby of photography. But this was back in the old days with box cameras and plates. And he said, wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody invented a roll of photographic material so that I wouldn't have to change the plate with each picture? That man's name was George Eastman, who started the Kodak Company. Last fall, for our small group discussions, we read the wonderful book, Discover the Power Within You. And if you remember, right near the beginning of the book, they talked about the Hindu legend, about how, back many, many centuries ago, we all understood that we didn't need to be more spiritual. We were spiritual beings having a human experience. In effect, we were gods. But unfortunately, the human race consciousness at the time was such that many people abused that privilege. So some of the gods got together and said, we need to take away their awareness of their divinity. And they got together with Brahma, the chief god. And they said, I think we should hide it in the ground. And they say, no, humans are an inquisitive type. They'll dig it up and find it. What about if we put it at the bottom of the deepest ocean? Here again, they'll figure out where to find it. What about the top of the highest mountain? Nope. They'll certainly look to try to climb the highest mountain in the world. Where's the last place they would look? And Brahma said, that's easy. Just bury it inside of themselves. You're always going to be looking for answers out here. When in reality, when you go within to that temple of God, and you open your mind to the divine mind and say, okay, God, show me, guide me, what do I need to do? It's a great book, Discover the Power Within You. In fact, I wish, one of my wishes is that everybody in our spiritual community read the book, Discover the Power Within You. So how do we change the world? Well, we change the world by doing what is ours to do. Whatever little gesture. It may not seem significant to you, like mowing the lawn in a vacant lot. But look at what happened with Florine Thornhill. So do what it is that you do so well. Maybe you make the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich that the world has ever tasted. Maybe you're the best mother in that you have a way of just nurturing children. We're going to close with a 2-minute video by Steve Hartman of the CBS Evening News, my brother from another mother, about a man who had a divine idea.
Bushnell Park in Hartford, Connecticut has all the typical city park sights, all the typical city park sounds. But there's one sight, one sound, one story here that is truly unique.
Okay, Willie, here we go.
Every Wednesday afternoon, 83-year-old Joe Samaras sets up a folding chair in the shade of an old oak tree, hooks his clippers to a car battery, and begins preening his exclusive clientele.
You haven't had a haircut in a long time, Willie.
Connecticut's homeless.
You're going to be all set for the summer.
Joe the Barber, as he's known here, is actually Joe the retired real estate investor. 26 years ago, he simply saw the need and decided to take scissors into his own hands. He's been their barber ever since.
When I do a job on them, they get the homeworks. If they got a dry scalp, I got something that they get their scalp massage, and then they get slopped up with $30 a bottle Estee Lauder moisturizing aftershave. I don't have any more of that.
Wow, this is full service.
Yeah, and then they get a hug. I mean, well, they give me a hug. That's what it is.
Well, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
The hug is actually the payment, the only payment Joe requires.
I'll stay here as always, Joe.
Salvatore is one of his regulars.
Stay as nice as you are.
What does he do for you other than make your hair shorter?
He shows a lot of love for everybody that comes here. Not just me, but for everybody that's here. He's like a grandparent almost to all of us.
I heard that same sentiment from everyone,
He's like family, like a father.
including Joe.
They're my family. They really are my family. You should have such a family.
That sincerity means the world to his customers. These guys are so used to being avoided. The fact that someone just touches them,
You gonna be all right? Yes.
really touches them. The fact that someone cares beyond putting $1 in a coffee cup is worth $1 million.
Handsome guy like you, and you have to get messed up with that stuff. Yeah.
That's what makes Joe's haircut special. And you don't even need a mirror
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
to see the results.
I love you.
Not as much as I love you, you know that.
Steve Hartman on the road in Hartford, Connecticut.
I want to read you a poem by the prolific author Anonymous.
When God made the earth, God could have finished, but God didn't. God left it as raw material to tantalize us, to start us thinking and experimenting, and risking and adventuring, and therein lies life's greatest meaning. God gave us an unfinished world so that we might share with God the joy and satisfaction of creation. And may you always be open to God's guidance and grace.
May you always be open to God's guidance and grace.
We take time now to go within and focus on God, the infinite Spirit. God is our ever-present source and supply. We are never alone because God is always with us, within us, and all around us. In the wind, in the rain, in the warmth of the sun. We breathe in the breath of Spirit and feel God's presence and power. Prayer is an act of giving our attention to God, not our problems or our challenges. It is a release of these problems and concerns. And it is faith that Spirit is at work in the world, even though we may not always see it or feel it. In prayer, we surrender to a higher mind than our own human mind. We surrender to God mind, infinite intelligence. We consent to a higher level of thought that sees beyond appearances. We choose to open our heart and mind and see life as an opportunity for us, as spiritual beings having a human experience, to learn lessons and to evolve in consciousness. We know this truth for others as well. As we call to mind those who we wish to hold in prayer today, whether it is a loved one, a country, or a colleague at work, we see them in our mind's eye. We know that whatever may be happening now in their lives, that they are not alone. We trust and know that Spirit is at work within them, providing courage, strength, and guidance. As we prepare for a time in the silence, we visualize a world at peace. We see the world through the eyes of love. And we affirm and know that peace, harmony, and healing energy are flowing forth now in the silence. As we draw in a deep, cleansing breath, we slowly become aware of our surroundings. Our communion with God's infinite peace has sent ripples of love and light out into the world. Refreshed and renewed, we give thanks for this sacred time of prayer. God is blessing us at all times and in all ways. And for this, we are truly grateful. And we say, thank you, Spirit. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.